Have you ever listened to a great leader speak and just think, wow, I am so impressed by what she's saying right now. I'll do whatever she wants me to do. I'll go on any mission she wants me to go on, right? When you listen to someone who just has that ability to speak like a CEO, speak like a leader, when you hear them talk so effortlessly, it seems like it's just gorgeous to listen to. And it gives you a feeling confidence, not just in them, but in yourself as well. So how do you talk like that? Let's talk about that today. My name is Tom, and I'm the founder of Vertical Motion, where we help good people become great leaders. If you're interested in learning more about that, there's a link down below in the description explaining our programs and how we help people take the next step in their careers and their life journeys. So with that, let's dive into today's content, where we're going to talk about the 5 ways you can speak like a CEO and command authority in the room. So what does it mean to sound like a CEO? How do you speak like a CEO? This is really interesting to me. There was a study done by the University of California that found that the tonality and the voice of a leader was twice as important as the message they delivered in terms of how people saw them as a leader. So how you show up, your presence, your voice, your tonality, that stuff actually matters. And it matters enough that it actually outweighs the message that you're saying. Think of it this way. I could say something like this. I think I've got an idea about how we can solve this problem, and I think it's going to save us about $100,000, maybe. That's one way. I have an absolute plan to solve this. It's going to save us $20,000. Now, the first one, I'm going to save more money, but I sound like I have no self-confidence. The second one, I have all the confidence in the world, but it's not the best idea. Which one are you more likely to follow? You're going to follow the person who has more of this executive presence, this gravitas, this confidence, this tonality, right? And so let's talk about the 5 ways that you can improve the way you speak so you sound more like a CEO. So number 1, clarity is king or queen, however you want to think about it. But clarity is really, really, really important. One of the things that drives me insane is when someone starts explaining something and I can't understand what they're talking about. When people do that, one of 2 things is usually true. They have no idea what they're talking about, or they're manipulative. And in both cases, I don't want to listen to that person anymore. So whenever someone starts talking about something and they just can't explain it to me in a way that explain like I'm 5 years old, what are you talking about, right? If you can't do that, then you're not going to come off as a great leader. Imagine explaining something to your grandmother or your 5-year-old child. Can they understand what you're talking about, this high esoteric thing? Like, I have a son who's studying astrophysics at CU Boulder, and he comes in and talks to me about the Schwarzschild radius of a black hole. And it's like, I kind of get it because I'm a satellite guy, but man, he gets into this jargon and these terms that I just never heard of, and I don't understand it. And so I work with him to say, okay, explain to me like I'm 5. What are you saying? He's like, the big thing eats all of the light. I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me, right? When you can break things down to a level that's more easily understood, and you can use analogy and other ways to explain this to people, it helps other people feel like you have the ability to communicate with them. Clarity in communication is absolutely important. In fact, Harvard did a research study that showed that clarity in communication was the number 1 skill that CEOs look for when they're hiring their C-suite team. So be clear and concise in your communication. And avoid jargon too. Make sure that you don't drop into a bunch of acronym soup that people just don't understand. All right, what's number 2? If you haven't figured it out by now, one of the things that you have to do is have confidence in your voice, right? If you listen to the way that I'm speaking to you right now, I'm speaking with tonality that exudes confidence. If I was speaking like this and I just kind of didn't say things in the way that felt comfortable, then, it's not going to really come off, with any kind of confidence or whatever. No. So imagine that person leading a team. That's awful, right? So the tonality, the confidence in your voice actually matters a lot. One of my clients came to the program and she had this kind of sing-song voice that was great to listen to, but it didn't really exude confidence. And we worked on her communication skill primarily to help her sound more like an executive leader. And over time, she got to be so good at communication that she actually got promoted adored the vice president, but more importantly, people just really respected her differently than they used to. And her confidence has soared. She's grown a lot. It's just incredible to watch when you change one little thing about them and they light up like a Christmas tree. Tonality and the tone that you use to communicate really is important. So if you want to sound like a CEO, talk like a CEO. Use a slightly deeper inflection or lower tone like I'm using. If I'm using this higher tone, it doesn't sound. And also end on a down note as opposed to an up note. When you end on an up note, it sounds like you're asking a question. You're not sure, maybe, right? You want to be ending on down notes so that you know that what you're saying sounds more declarative. Hope that makes sense. Number 3 is one of my favorites, which is you need to master the art of storytelling. Humans are social creatures. And even if you're an engineer and a scientist and you're stuck in your own head all the time, you have to realize humans are social creatures. And what humans tend to resonate with are really good stories. If you want to change someone's beliefs, data can only go so far. The reality is that if you want to change someone's beliefs, you have to change their experiences. So they can either live new experiences or you can give them new stories. And this really helps to convince people of things that they weren't convinced of before. Steve Jobs is one of the greatest storytellers in the history of the planet Earth. He told amazing stories. He sold computers and phones and printers and things like that, but he made it feel like we're talking about revolutionizing the way humans and technology interact with each other. And his stories were just amazing to listen to. I could listen to Steve Jobs all the time. And, all of his arrogance aside, his storytelling ability, the art of evangelism is something to behold. And so he is kind of the gold standard for evangelists, product evangelists specifically. And this one was really interesting. A study by Stanford found that stories were 22 times more memorable than facts alone. 22 more times memorable. So think about it. It's 2,200%. It is more likely by 22 times that someone will remember a story that you tell versus some data and fact that you tell them. So tell your data and fact in stories, and that will help people retain and understand and connect with what you're trying to accomplish a whole lot easier. Number 4 here is to be an active listener. One of the things that we're all guilty of, including myself, is sometimes that we listen to respond. We listen to react. Instead, what you want to do is listen to learn. You want to give someone, basically think of it this way. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and so therefore you should be listening twice as much as you're speaking, right? I'm in this monologue right now, but if you and I were talking one-to-one, I would be listening to you more than me just talking all the time. So you want to be able to listen to what someone is saying and understand what they're trying to communicate to you. Sometimes the words, the tonality, what they're doing doesn't actually line up with the message they're trying to convey. And that's what you have to figure out. I like to say that communication is what the listener does. It's the listener who actually gets the information or doesn't get the information. And some of the best CEOs I've ever worked with are people who make you feel seen and heard when you're around them. One of my favorite stories is from a friend of mine who worked for White House Communications Agency, and he worked for Presidents Clinton, Bush, and Obama. And he said all 3 of them were people who went out of their way to know the staff that worked in the White House. And he said that they would come up to him and ask about his daughter, ask about his family. If there was someone sick, they would know about it and want to know how they're feeling and things like that. And all 3 presidents had this same ability to make everyone feel heard. They listened to them and responded after they understood. So take time to be an active listener. Another interesting fact on this is that 86% of customers say that they will work with a company that they feel like listens to the customer as opposed to doesn't. So understand that throughout business and life, when you actively listen to others, you're going to sound more like a leader to them. And the number 5 is probably a pretty obvious one, but body language really matters here. Your presence, your physical presence really matters. So here I am standing up My shoulders are up. I'm in a confident pose. I'm using my hands to kind of gesture. I'm sharing something with you right now, right? That is a nonverbal communication of what I'm trying to teach, right? So the words that I say are part of it. That's the message. The way I say the words, the tonality is part of it. That's the verbal communication. And then there's all this nonverbal stuff. Like if I was slouched over and, like even if I sound confident, it just doesn't look right. And so you have to have that physical confidence show up in the way that you present yourself. So being slouched over, being poorly dressed, being kind of like that stuff is really going to hold you back from being seen as the executive leader you want to be. So be willing to invest in practicing your stance, your pose, be comfortable and confident, and just look the part. Look around at other great leaders and see how they carry themselves. And what do they look like? Do they show up with a tight-fitting suit or their hair done real well? Or are they showing up as kind of sloppy, slovenly, and looking lazy, right? Who would you want to follow? That nonverbal communication of your physical appearance really does matter. So that's it for you. Those are the 5 tips that I think are the most valuable tools in understanding how to communicate like a CEO. And just to recap, number 1, be clear. So clarity is king or queen. Number 2, have confidence in your voice. Number 3, master the art of storytelling. Number 4, active listening is a superpower. And then number 5, body language speaks volumes. So if you can master those 5 things, you will sound more like a C-suite executive than you do now. So go ahead and practice these things. By the way, I just want to give a shout out to Toastmasters. I have no affiliation with them, but I love Toastmasters. You can go to their website, toastmasters.org. They're a nonprofit that's international, where you can go to a local meetup and practice presentation skills. If you can stand in front of a room of 8 other people who are just as nervous about presenting as you are, that's a great way for you to build the confidence over time so that you can practice these things, the tonality, the body language, the storytelling, all of it. So check out Toastmasters. It's a great way to learn how to practice all of this stuff outside someplace safe. So I hope this was valuable to you. I'm excited to hear your stories about how you sound like a CEO more so than you did before. So let me know if you take away anything from here that was useful to you. With that, I'll leave you be and have a great one. I'll see you in the next one.